We've moved on. Little bit of a change from what's on the programme, because I realised that what's on the programme is what I'm doing. A large chunk of it will be what I'm doing to everybody a little bit later. So, slight tweak today, a little bit less of a focus on the Unity PD angle, which is our sort of professional development product, and more of a focus on expertise. And I don't claim to be an expert in this space. It's something that I've sort of been building my knowledge around over time, and have recently become aware of a whole series of additional kind of cognitive models. I mean, that go a little bit beyond the sort of short-term and long-term memory stuff that's sort of shared so widely in the education system. Something more nuanced. And when we got into that, I realised that there were some real implications of those changes and that nuance. So anyway, I just wondered if before we start, because we're quite a small group, whether we could just go around and introduce ourselves and say where we're from and any particular area of interest. Is that all right? Do you mind doing that? Shall I pick, or should we just start on the... I'll start with you. Look, there you go.
I'll start first. I'm Anna Kotecki. I work at Iris Connect. I've been around for a very, very long time, 7 years now. And my role is to support schools that use Iris Connect. So I get to talk to amazing teachers every single day, which is a fabulous part of the job as a former teacher myself. So really enjoy it.
I'm Chris Cavey. I work at the British Council. If 7 years is a long time, then I'm a dinosaur. British Council for 20-something years. And I'm involved in teacher development, in projects around the world, in English language teachers in state schools globally, but a lot of our work is in low resource context. And we are using Iris Connect for various projects in teacher development, teacher activity groups, community practice.
I'm Josh. I work in a special school in Salisbury. I'm the head of teaching and learning. I get to work with Anna quite regularly, which is really good. So done quite a bit of stuff on the Iris Connect platform, doing the talk next if anyone's got a spare 40 minutes or whatever. But really looking forward to the rest of today.
Much recommended, actually.
Hi, I'm Hayley, assistant head at a local school in Birmingham. Lead on teaching and learning across our MAT and writing lead across our MAT also.
Hi, I'm Anna Richardson. I work at Thomas Watt Academy in Doncaster. We do quite a lot of work with Iris. We did sort of conference that I recognise a couple of people from, and we were lucky enough to do a case study, so pick up one of these. This is about us. And we really feel that Iris has been hugely instrumental in developing our culture at Thomas Watt and getting everybody sort of bought into reflecting and developing. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that this afternoon as well. So.
Wonderful, lovely to put a face to the next one. We'll catch up later.
I'm Maxine Chamberlain, and I'm a lecturer in nursing skills and nursing apprenticeships over at University College in Birmingham. So my substantive role is that the students that I look after come in really with sort of level 2 English and maths, and the mature students on an apprenticeship, and I've journeyed with them for 18 months all the way through to their achievement of a level 5 qualification and then take them through graduation at Sydney Hall.
Wonderful. Lovely venue as well.
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Jo Dooley. I work at Co-op Academy Babington. I'm SEND support within the School for Curriculum, and I have a TLR for the coordinating of Iris. We've worked with Iris for 10 years. It's our 10-year anniversary this year, I've just been informed. It's had real impact at the school that I work in.
Hi, I'm Jo Day. I'm from Trent College. I'm assistant head at teaching and learning there, and we're coming to find out more about how we can use this with our professional review model, because we want to look at changing that to more teacher-led one rather than one that we ask them to do with our agenda.
I'm Darren Brumby, the deputy head at Trent College. I'm here really, I sound a bit obvious, actually very much to support Jo, because a lot of our professional development teaching learning actually falls to Joe, and then the pushing it through governors in terms of what we want to do and change models and everything else will be me pushing it.
Right.
Hi.
Last but not least.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Alex. I work for Teach First. I'm based in Bristol. I'm a former primary school teacher, and we've been using Iris Connect for a couple of years as for our initial teacher training. And I work in digital learning, so it's a really key part of my role in terms of when we transform to a blended model. It's been a fantastic piece of tool for us as we've shifted away from totally in-person teacher development. So I'm just interested in finding out a bit more.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everyone. It's lovely to have such sort of rich expertise in the room and so many perspectives. So, as I say, I hope that we can all kind of share our thinking today, and it's not just going to be about me pressing buttons up here. That said, just to let you know, this, as I implied, has been a bit of a hurriedly cobbled together alteration, so please forgive spellos. I spotted one on my first slide, so I'll come back here so you didn't see it, but I can't avoid it. It'll be coming up so shortly. And there is a sort of, it's a bit of an unruly presentation, but most of it's going to be about other things and talking. So let's focus on this. This is what I'd like to do. Really, we're going to talk a lot about expertise. People talk about expertise a lot, but I then sometimes feel like we don't have a particularly strong working definition of it. You know, we talk about knowledge, and we talk about skills, but what's the interface between those two things? How does it work, and how does that then embody as expertise? And then the second part is just this model that I was talking about, the ACT-R model. There are multiple models of cognition in the brain, but ACT-R I thought was particularly interesting because it kind of, for me, went to the heart of, or provided a scaffold for understanding expertise. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time on that and then consider what the implications are for us in education from the perspective of professional development. And then at the end, as I say, we won't major on this, but I'd like to show you how we've built the pathways on Iris Connect, a new feature, a new tool, with that thinking in mind, with the mindfulness of this development of expertise and the implications of ACT-R. So, just to give you a little bit of background, we at Iris believe that we need to be raising an expert generation. Expert as in adaptive experts, compassionate experts, connected experts, but ultimately when you think about the challenges that are coming in the next 50 years for young people, nothing else is going to do. We really need to be in that space. And you know, I was just thinking about how much has changed in the last 50 years and thinking about how the acceleration of that in the next, you know, especially if anyone's used sort of ChatGPT recently. Anyone had a go with that? That's a game changer right there. So that's one of the sort of the real focus for us is like, how can we kind of leverage what we have available to us to be able to achieve that. And I think one of the things that I think is really important to say is that I believe we're at a bit of an inflection point in that regard, because I think 50 years ago, if you said I want every child to grow up an expert, people would have laughed you out of the room, an expert at something. But I think we've got a much better understanding now. We've got a really fairly deep understanding of what matters in terms of professional development for teachers, what matters in terms of learning experiences for young people. And so I think we've got a shot at it, is basically what I'm saying. So that's where, you know, if I were to summarise the kind of research and assimilation of research that we've done over, you know, the last 10 years, it can be broken down into this. You know, we need to provide an increasingly well-defined set of learning experiences for young people, facilitated by an unbroken chain of expert teachers, and that needs to be underpinned by evidence-informed professional development. Now, what's really interesting is this word here. It gets people's backs up. Teacher Tap did a survey recently where they asked, would you prefer to be referred to as an effective teacher or an expert teacher? 80% of people said effective. And I think that's partially because you're a very modest lot as a profession. but also because I feel that we don't really have a good definition of expertise. It's hard to say whether it's expert or not. That said, who observes classrooms, who spends time in classrooms? Everybody, I assume. You kind of know it when you see it. You know, someone who's in the zone, in the flow, they're operating expertly. And also, I don't think other professions have that same reticence about using the term expert. Would you like to be flown by an expert or effective pilot? Would you like to be operated on by an expert or effective surgeon? So, with that in mind, I just want to take it outside of PD for a moment, and I want you to think about something that you are expert at. It doesn't have to be a highly evolved expert. You don't have to be a virtuoso pianist, but there's always something that you've got there, like whether it be making the best cup of tea in your school, all the way through to cooking and a particular dish that you enjoy producing. Just have a little think about that and share with your partner or whoever's sitting next to you, three just over there maybe, what that is. And first of all, how it feels when you're doing the thing you're expert at. So share what it is and how it feels when you're doing it.
Actually, I don't think I'm expert at anything. I think I'm good. And it depends where you are. Like you look at the barrier to jump to expertise, isn't it? Because,
getting everything
I think I'm a particular senior leader. I think I'm a good politician.
I'm effective then.
I hope. It's no thing I'm not an expert, but then, exactly. I've worked with better mathematicians, better teachers, better things. And there's the complexity of what anybody is.
Absolutely. I'm not helping at the moment.
It's funny that when I'm helping, when I do my own job, it just feels like something that I just do. So it's when I'm helping other people's children or other families or supporting other families, then obviously I feel like it's more useful, better. I suppose my next time persuading people to do things as well, which is why I was
Which is so weird because I keep drawing parallels from when I was a teacher.
Can I add an extra question into your dialogue? Just fold this one in, and that is, what are you thinking about when you're doing it?
Is there
process that I went through.
Not really, because I suppose I was ahead of maths in a very academic school, and so by virtue of that, I tried to teach very well, actually, and so but interestingly, I'm certainly not an expert mathematician. I work with one of my he's an expert mathematician, but having said that, probably one of the strongest mathematicians that I've worked with, but I've just seen because the virtue of the schools I've worked in is depth of experience. It takes you around to doesn't mean you couldn't do this. The role I do now, my role is so large actually. Yeah, I don't. Almost the jackal of the trade, I spend my time.
Just doing this
issues with governors, there's a lot that I do. And I'm interested is the nature of those teachers, isn't it?
Can I fold another question in? What did you do become expert at it? What were the steps? What were the processes involved?
Answer the first question.
But I think a bit like you, that rep in my role, I do want to get so I say to my manager, I don't feel I've been told I'm the digital learning expert in your standard
The functional matrix and head was one thing.
because
What I do think I'm very good at is learning. Actually interesting. I think I'm very good at
Competence.
so what do you do to sort of and then
Really supporting them.
it's quite
You live through what they're going through, you know,
a big bit, isn't it? Is that I don't know. I think keep going into
you can offer so much advice, but
in terms of read it, listen. Two children now, read endlessly.
we have a thing on Iris, this Iris bloopers thing that we get at school, things have gone wrong,
One more minute, and then I'll just ask people to get out. Yeah, she'll give you 30 more seconds, just finish your conversation.
French and French school. And it's totally nothing to do with that.
even that, like, online or
And I'm quite good at it's simple. You can get out and reading a friend and reading a bit till you go in French, which is hard going, but of course it's different. You've got duck and you can also take time to translate.
5, 4. I don't need it, do I? You're through two group.
Quite simple, and they laugh at me now.
Is anybody willing to share their area of expertise in a quick chat with me? Anyone particularly interesting? Any sort of jugglers or? Well, yeah, you're all jugglers. You're in education, of course, but basically, or maybe summarise what was on the what was spoken about on the table if we don't have a direct volunteer. Maybe someone could summarise what was being talked about here for me. Just in terms of, sorry, just to be clear, in terms of like what the skills that were discussed, what you were thinking about, how you felt while you were doing it.
Well, when you asked that about how we felt, we got onto that issue of sort of conscious and unconscious competence. That kind of unconscious competence when you're doing lots of things without.
Yeah.
You're thinking of lots of things without really consciously thinking about them, like knowing what's going on around your classroom, without having to.
Yeah. I often think of like I don't know, Roger Federer or something. He's not thinking about his forehand. He's not thinking about his backhand. He's thinking about the position in the game, or where he needs to put pressure on his opponent, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And how does it feel? So, how does it feel when you're doing something you're good at?
I think certainly we had kind of two camps here. So we had sort of the practical, sort of those who like to do cooking and sort of more household skills. And I think they were very excited about the passion about the cooking. Is it the carbonara? And sort of bed making here. So we kind of had we kind of had a sort of two camps, and then sort of the other side of sort of those interpersonal skills and things like confidence and sort of resilience. So we had sort of the practical, and then the sort of other side, the sort of life skills really.
That's fascinating. One of the things that I'll walk myself into a corner here. The flow states. Who's heard of flow states? Yeah, I think one of the corner I've walked myself into is trying to pronounce the name of the psychology lecturer behind it. Chalmalinski. Anyone? No? Anyone going to come to my rescue on that?
She's shaking me.
Oh, bingo. what you said. Yeah. No, but generally people, when they find themselves doing something with flow, is that they're not spending their time thinking about the individual operations, but their thinking is at a higher order. They're able to think strategically in the moment. And of course, you know, a lot of this starts feeling a little bit like cognitive load theory, right? You know, when we start talking about the level of cognitive load in your working memory, or short-term memory, that move to working memory. So let's pick something that we all was drilled into us at school that we're probably pretty expert at. Just very quickly, recite the alphabet. Quickly as you can, fast as you can possibly do. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I. Now just backwards. Right, okay, I think everyone's noticing, even though the information is in there, it is far, far harder. Far, far harder. So something's going on, right? Is anyone familiar with all this stuff? Is it just, yeah, okay. So I don't want to sort of teach my grandmother to suck eggs on it, but equally I do think it's quite interesting. So our knowledge is stored in schema. You know, that's how we sort of conceptualise the notion of information that's stored in our long-term memory. The nature of schema is that they're interconnected and they're actually malleable. But skills like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, they are different. They are a different thing. The brain treats them differently. They're called, within the ACT-R model, we call them productions, and they're linear. They go in a particular way, in a particular order. So when I ask you to reverse it, what we have to do is use our working memory to manipulate the information that's in our schema to create a representation in our working memory, because that production won't work. So all of a sudden you're encountering cognitive load because you're doing something where one of your natural skills, one of your productions, isn't suitable. So it's an interesting perspective on the relationship between what we know and our skills, and I think it has some significant implications for us in the classroom and for teachers as well, for working with teachers. So let's think of another area, and I think this is, the reference for this is Trust Me Bro, I'm afraid, because I remember hearing it when I was quite young and thinking, well, that's interesting, but I've never been able to find for a reference to it since. But I believe NASA got extremely good at thinking about this problem when it came to the number of operations they could ask an astronaut to do at any one time. They really got deep on the science of it. And I believe when they started looking out into the rest of the world, they discovered that the most difficult thing a human can do is turning right in a manual car, because all four of your limbs are doing something differently at the same time. Your attention is probably in the mirror, you're reversing what you see in the mirror and interpreting it. You're looking out at the road conditions in front of you and behind you, you're communicating. All of these things are all happening at the same time, so it's an extremely good metaphor or good case study for us to be thinking about flow. But anyway, so we can all, well actually, sorry, it's a big assumption there. Not everyone can drive, but most of us have some level of experience either of being in a car with someone who's very fluent at driving or driving ourselves. So these are all those things that we end up doing, often simultaneously. And then one of the things that is also really notable is with a novice driver, when you're on the road in the first year of their existence, and they're so absorbed by all of those mechanical operations, turning left, mirror, signal, manoeuvre, that I remember doing this myself. Just driving past where I wanted to go and carrying on for about an hour in the wrong direction because I was so focused and missed my turn on the M25 and ended up somewhere else. So that's an interesting perspective, and just bringing it back to this notion of storing these sort of procedures in our working memory in order to be able to find, because obviously when it's in there, it's sitting alongside all of these other things that we either have a production for or a schema for, so that we can actually draw that forward, use that skill, and think about where we're going at the same time, because schemas and productions take up very little, when they're working properly, they take up very little space in our working memory. So when I apply that to sort of thinking about professional development in classrooms, you sort of see teachers, I think when I mentioned earlier, I think we've all experienced that. Obviously, it's when teachers, something like, I don't know, their questioning strategy is so routine, so easily accessible to them, that they can actually have the cognitive space to think about what they're learning from the learners, from their answers, to actually notice and attend to the information that's coming back to them, and be able to think about how they might action that. And that all comes down to having that cognitive space, because the skill's fluid. So it's this relationship between the fluid expertise and the knowledge and the objective. So that's one perspective with regards to kind of ACT-R. So the question is, how can we help teachers achieve that kind of fluidity of skill? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump through in the presentation just a little bit, because I don't think we need to labour the point on this. So, who's familiar with this this model here, the various sort of stages of skill acquisition? Have we come across this before? It's usually used in physical ed, PE. For some reason, it comes from this perspective. It's this notion that we have this cognitive phase of developing expertise. We have this phase where we are associative phase, and then there's finally kind of an autonomous phase of skill acquisition. Has anyone come across that before? Okay. Well, it just has some implications. So the cognitive phase, let's map that onto what we were just talking about. That's the bit where you're thinking about depressing the clutch, changing the gear, looking in the mirror, all of that sort of stuff. Then there's the associative phase where you're thinking about, okay, when should I use that series of skills? When should I use that production? Am I noticing on the road ahead that the turning's coming, so I'm going to need to use that? So I'm associating the skill with my objectives and what I want to achieve. And then finally, we've got that autonomous phase where those sort of things are fluid, we're using them strategically, but what's that sort of next step of like, how do I optimize it? How do I improve it? How can I make sure that I'm continuing to be as effective as I was? So let me just come through to another page here. So, a couple of different considerations here. That moving through these stages is usually associated with practice, and there's no substitute for it. But then, as you move through these phases, the level of cognitive load, cognitive demand on you is dramatically reducing. So that's a good thing. So one of the things that I'd just like to sort of think about here is, let's apply that to teaching, thinking specifically about the cognitive phase, when we're at that stage where we're developing those building blocks. What are the implications? So I'm thinking like early career teachers, new teachers, etc., for what professional development needs to look like and where it needs to happen and what the nature of the professional dialogue would be. So have a little think about when you're working with someone who's really just getting to grips with the basics, the kind of nature of the work that you'd be doing with them, or the way that professional development should respond in light of what we know about that car analogy.
We'll teach first. I'm going to leave this one for you.
have the opposite because we are in a situation sometimes where
we do.
music is an example where we have
Okay.
people, well, one or two who are musicians, and that's very different.
And what would you say to them?
Does Teach First work in the same model that it did when it started, in terms of taking it kind of had full graduates and effectively it's a very small training program and then into schools to then do their QTS effectively in the school? Is it still that model?
It's that model, but
Yeah.
that's one of our, that's our bread.
Okay.
Original.
Where
We
In terms of
the kind of things they're doing with the
beyond that now,
and the
we support them from training teacher,
Yeah,
career programs as well.
observing
Okay. So what do you talk about then when you're 3? Would you give them 3 gate?
The gatekeepers.
Okay.
So during the Summit Institute,
Yeah.
the bit before they go in
teaching learning groups
is we've got
each group
the classroom management,
meet together,
you know,
and then they will go away and they will look at areas that they
which I
are
think are great ways of
And you bill a small number of them to concentrate, presumably. Okay.
and then
into that group and then meet back together and do a reflection exercise based on
Yeah.
so how can you get a planning document
Yeah.
and walk through
we've used that model for a while, getting that through to staff that.
I remember just taking an hour to plan but then once you move into that phase that you can pull things together without necessarily having it just written down.
Yeah.
I think that's quite
It helps to think of it through the perspective of what you'd be doing as a learner driver in those that early stage of
teachers.
learning to drive a car. What's your instructor doing with you? What are they trying to achieve? What environment are you doing it? All those sort of things.
What about, say for, let's take the,
in their first clubs as well.
let's take the behaviour management. So you pick a couple of the Douglas strategies, which they go through the classroom. Do they rehearse those with each other?
Started off
Yes.
seeing
Yeah, okay.
That's it. So they
reflections from staff. Just while
Yeah,
we're
okay.
using it,
And
we
then
only
they-
use the actual
And they practice it.
material that's on there. And
They obviously then go into the
we
classroom
put down a
and it
level
all
of
goes
teaching
wrong,
learning
because that's just what happens.
for on staff.
And what
And I think
where does the cycle go
having
now in terms of Teach
a
First?
non-SLT member staff
the level of support
coordinator of it
Yeah.
yeah,
is
they
a game
were
changer.
so
So that's really the back because I've got background teaching and learning, but I'm not an SLT. And then I can
As they would do in
I say yes, well,
Okay.
that's what we'll
And do they,
that is
and
what
if I'm
we're
not, so say for example, we take Teach First
they would
students on, they'll have done their training on their summer programme, which presumably we would know about. Okay. And we take them on, they go into the classroom, they teach with maths.
Yeah, we said about like those drives.
Yeah.
The solutions to that is with those drives, the instructor's going to take some quiet, well, it's not like a busy mode.
Yeah.
You're going to learn those skills in that problem space, somewhere.
Yeah.
Be quiet. Coming into mistakes.
It's obviously like to form the environment where there's obviously like drop one in order to focus the attention on the other. That's really sort of key to the whole. And obviously the other thing characteristic of it is the individual car controls and they're sort of like giving you interactive feedback to help you shift from one thing to another.
We sort of talked about like not knowing what the car's actually telling you, because like, we talked about the noises that make you use change gear. If you don't have that skill set, you don't know what that means in sort of reflective in the classroom. Like, we assume that people know these things, but actually, to ask that question, we start to see that there's errors and we don't think it's important to just assume.
Yeah, but I think also sort of recognising sort of assumptions which the learner should know and they do not know becomes a barrier for learning. So it's stripping away and sort of finding out which assumptions are relevant and which ones are not. Otherwise that barrier just seems to follow all the way through.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, I mean, I say a long time, short time. just wanted to think quickly about that associative phase, the one in the middle, where you're sort of learning to apply the skills that you've learned. I think one of the perspectives, again, thinking of the role of the instructor, which is kind of our PE program, for the sake of our argument here. One of the things that's really evident there is the talk and drive, you know, where the instructor will model, you can go out and drive and talk about the things they're seeing in real time. So I'll start saying, I can see that we're doing 30 mile an hour limit, easing off the gas. I'm thinking about keeping an eye out for pedestrians, all that sort of stuff. So there's a sort of worked example built in. And then of course that's an effort to manage cognitive load again, because when I'm doing this full concert of skills, there's still not quite enough space for me to start thinking strategically. And then there's a graduation from that, which is where you're driving and they're still doing the mental modelling. So they're saying, but down the road, can you see we're entering 30 and you ease off the gas. So there's this beautiful graduation from a context, of environment context, from safe, simple places to complex places. And then there's this role of the driving instructor managing your cognitive load all the way through from where they're giving you feedback about how to hold use the clutch, all the way through to the other end of the spectrum saying, so how do you think that went? What could you have done better? What stood out to you? Oh, I see, okay. Well, maybe next time, just slow down a little bit before the roundabout, or whatever it is. So there's this lovely sort of progression between the two. I think there's something important in this as a message for us about the sort of professional development we offer people, because you'd be mistaken when you read sort of like particular coaching programs, that is the coaching program for everybody. You know, you sort of say, well, okay, let's engage with this form of instructional coaching. We're all doing that now. That's probably not the right path. You know, on one end of the spectrum, people need the coach who says, so how do you think that went? What do you think we could do differently? Helping them find the solutions to their own problems. And then at the other end of the spectrum, yes, that direct skills coaching is so appropriate because it helps us to manage the cognitive load we need to be able to get into the associative phase. So I think when we're talking about professional development, it's that kind of nuance, that ability to select and adapt and apply, you know, different experiences and give different people and different circumstances different experiences. I feel like that's a bit lost at the moment in the general dialogue in the space of education. So if we'd had just a wee bit more time, we'd have walked through that all a little bit more dialogically, but I thought it was probably important just to get the key message of the workshop across. Any sort of final reflections or thoughts on what we've talked about today? Anything that's sort of new to you, or anything that you feel has some application? Yes.
What you've described is actually good music education.
Yeah.
And this is where in a schools professional development can actually learn a lot if you've got a strong, effective music department, because that is what they do every single day.
Right.
The practice of music teaching is exactly what you described.
Yeah, so you've got the expert at the other end of the spectrum thinking about pace and intonation and individual note sound, all the, the deep, and then at this end of the spectrum we're trying to work out how to make a chord.
And interestingly, in the school I'm at, the music department are the departments who are the most engaged in the Iris platform.
That's fascinating. Okay, so it's maybe they sort of get an echo of it from that.
I think they're just used to that whole looking at themselves, reflecting, how can they take it back, how can they make things smoother, how can they use a range of skills to make things better. And I just think their mindset in our school and other schools I've worked at.
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you for that. Any other reflections or perspectives that would be useful to others, maybe? Okay, lovely. Well, I think we can safely break there. Yeah, so a few minutes early, so you get maybe a chance to have a quick coffee before your next session. So anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.